Welcome back to Keeping BZ, the podcast-like show where Zach and I show and tell each other a game to necessitate the fact that we have to listen to each other. And that, this time around, is a game for Sage 2025. This is called Jinx. It's described as being a mix of Sonic Adventure, Super Mario Sunshine, some other like Sega games. This is purely an alpha. It's just like one test level. While it seems like there may not be much at the surface, this is actually a huge level with multiple ways to explore. So I wanted to take a look at this, show it to Zach, and maybe give some feedback for the developer who seems to be credited as Moff, M-O-F-F. Our character here actually has a pretty dynamic amount of movement options. So, jump, you can do like a stomp, like in Sonic. If you hit the stomp button on the ground, you do a slide. There's a forward dash, but it's more like a forward fly. And then we also have a little Crash Bandicoot spin attack, which, gives you a little more movement in the air, so you can do like a... And we'll see how we can combine these powers as we get deeper in. We also have just full-on tarot cards. Each one has its own special ability it can do. The sword here allows us to have a couple little floating swords that we can use to throw at enemies. We also have the homing attack like in Sonic. But I love the amount of airtime it gives you when you do that. The thing that stuck out to me with this game, the reason why I chose it in the first place, is because I just looked at it and went, wow, the music, the aesthetics, the character design, all of it immediately just felt like the perfect culmination of the vibes of a Sega game from the mid to late 90s. Even a bit of the early 2000s too, but it has a bit of that Knights flavor. This NPC will just tell us about the cards that we collect. So we got a little portal card that you see there. So what does that card do? Well, let me see if I find a decent opportunity to use it. Okay, hit that guy. That guy. And essentially what this card does is gives us a super high jump. It's perfect for finding shortcuts. But yeah, to give you an idea of what we're traversing to, this is what the whole scope of this level looks like. A lot of different pathways, a lot of stuff to see, and the game's frame rate does not love it when I try to look at the full scope of everything. Simba, everything the light touches gives you frame rate problems. So, I'm going to try my best not to look that way because it is a little bit nauseating when you're getting all these frame rate issues. So, Zach, what's your impressions of this simple little platform-looking game so far, having this kind of open structure like this?
The camera does seem a little weird, like it keeps getting behind things, but I do like the character design of, I'm assuming his name is Jinx, or their name.
I believe so, yes.
I really like the character design, like the art style in general looks really good. I like how these enemies look. Yeah, this also does give me that vibe of a Dreamcast game, even though I really haven't actually played a Dreamcast game. I think I got to play a little bit of Shenmue, and I played a little bit of Sonic Shuffle once. I have played Sonic Adventure 1, and I've beaten that, and this game does give me big Sonic Adventure 1 and Knights vibes, like you said.
Yeah, like they say Sunshine, also for Super Mario Sunshine, but I don't 100% see where that comes in while I'm playing it.
That's fine, that game's bad anyway.
Well, yeah, neither Zach and I are particularly big fans of Super Mario Sunshine for the reasons that people on the internet usually are not fans of Super Mario Sunshine. The fact that I just find it just kind of dull. I don't like the camera. The levels where you get your pack taken away, I understand why some people see them as a nice challenge, but I'm unfortunately one of those people you've seen online that suffered glitches with it where I would just fall through platforms. So I don't like Super Mario Sunshine all that much. I'm happy it got reinstated on the Switch through the 3D All-Stars collection that Nintendo stupidly made a limited time release. But I don't think Sunshine should be given the appreciation that something like, you know, Galaxy already has.
I mean, I will say I think Sunshine is much better than Wario World. I did not like Wario World at all.
I played a little bit of that, and I think it's interesting that they tried to do a 3D Wario game, but I remember it being simplistic in a way that just never really gave me much to work with. I just never really got into it. I kind of gave up after a couple levels. I was just borrowing a bunch of friends' GameCube games in high school around that time, and that was just one of the ones I borrowed, and Wario World bored me. Super Mario Sunshine bored me, and then what was the other one? Then I also borrowed a Luigi's Mansion, and then that game was like actually fun, so I enjoyed that one.
Luigi's Mansion deserves the love that Sunshine gets. Although it's weird because I remember when Sunshine first came out, that one was kind of seen as a black sheep, but I feel like nowadays I don't hear anyone, or I barely hear anyone talk about it poorly. But like a lot of Sunshine fans still go like, you know, like nobody likes Sunshine, like liking Sunshine is so hipster. It's like I have only seen 3 other people besides you and me that don't like Sunshine. Everyone else thinks it's one of the best Mario platformers. Although, personally, the only 3D Mario game well, actually, no, I like 3D World, but I am a very, very huge fan of Odyssey. I think Odyssey's incredible.
Yeah, and I know some people see Odyssey as a downgrade to Galaxy, and I never totally understood why. I like Galaxy a lot, but overall, in terms of just, like, what I like in terms of platforms, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of like design, I love Odyssey. I love the variety of environments and locations, as well as obviously the possessing enemies gimmick is incredibly fun in that game.
There's not a single bad enemy to possess in that game, I feel like. I thought there would be at least one that would make me go, oh, this one, but no, I like them all. Now that's I didn't 100% Odyssey. Fuck 100%ing Odyssey. But that is absolutely the most effort I've ever put into at least trying to complete as much of a 3D platformer as I could. And I do enjoy 3D platformers. They're not my favorite genre, like platformers in general. I can enjoy them. There have been ones I've enjoyed. I brought up Klonoa a couple of times. That's one of my favorites. But platformers I just see as like something to play, something to do. They're fun. But generally my favorites are a bit more story-heavy, which is probably why I like Klonoa a lot. That one has a pretty decent story. Actually, more than decent. Oh, that ending still makes me sad. But go back to being a little bit more relevant. Honestly, I quite like Sonic Adventure 1. It's a bit jank, and there's some characters, Big, Amy, and Gamma. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of playing as them, but they weren't so awful that I felt like quitting the game. I do really enjoy playing as Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. I brought it up before. I don't like Sonic Adventure 2. I like the Sonic Shadow stages, and that's it. They absolutely ruined the treasure hunting levels in Sonic Adventure 2. I thought they were fun in the first game.
They also didn't take forever in the first game. There we go. Now we're making some progress.
It is nice to see that this style of game is starting to come around in the indie scene. But it might be easy for me to say that because this is more my nostalgia. Instead of just, hey everybody, we're all gonna make 8-bit games from the 80s, yay.
Or, you know, the amount of PS1 style games that were coming out for a long time.
I'm sure there's, like, definitely a lot of them, but none of them immediately come to mind. I know there's Nightmare Kart. Which, that one was Bloodborne cart, but then they had to change it.
Yeah, I'm mostly referring to, like, when everybody was trying to make their own Resident Evil and doing PS1 style graphics, but eventually, you know, you got some good ones in there. You know, you do have your, you know, Alicia's, you do have your Crow Countries that do use it in an effective way, but that's because, you know, those had a distinct art style and it didn't just feel like they're using a PS1 style because it's an indie game and they don't have a budget for something above that. It felt like a little more, you know, determined.
Honestly, if people are going to do the PS1 style, I hope more of them do the Mega Man Legends, because I've said it before, Mega Man Legends is my favorite looking classic 3D game.
Right, but that's what I mean, choosing an art style that actually looks good instead of just making it look like, oh, it looks kind of bad because it's a PS1 game. But to be fair, that era does not hold up as well as a lot of later areas of 3D graphics, because that was like the first era of 3D graphics. But there's ways to do it right.
I am impressed by how much is in this alpha? Early? I'm going to call it alpha.
Yeah, I mean, it is just one level that's done that they just were like, hey, here's what I did yet. Like, look at this.
Yeah, because I remember you were talking to me about how so many of them are just a small little sandbox. Where it's just like, yeah, I have the jump programmed and I have some other things programmed, but that's about it. It just shows the programming more than any of the level design. And I feel like if you're going to show off your game, I'm not saying it has to have like a perfectly designed level, but some, like, a level to run through. Give people an idea of not just the physics and programming, but also the, like, how you would design the levels, I think is a good idea.
Right. Because, I mean, I look at this, and you were comparing it to the Sonic Adventure comparison, and yeah, I see that, where it's like a more expansive version of of what is traditionally more linear with Sonic Adventure. I love all the different pathways and the openness of it. The only thing I would suggest is that, and some people have brought this up in the comments for this too, is that sometimes, you know, it's a little hard to tell where you're going, or what you're supposed to be doing. But I think this is a good way to expand upon that type of formula to make these expansive levels that are all about exploration. Like, you know, maybe there should be a landmark that dignifies where you should be getting to at the end, which in this case it is like this big Colosseum thing over here. But you don't know that at first, and you're just kind of exploring. So, you know, it might also depend on the person and their taste too. To me, I'd want like maybe a slight nod as to a direction to be heading in, and then I can just like keep exploring from there. But I'd be happy to see what this would be like when it's more developed, because, you know, when Zach and I, you know, bitch about open world games, you know, we're talking about the ones that are just like, here's an entire city created in this engine, or here's this open stretch of lands and countryside in this engine, and we just built all this, but like now we got to populate it with like things to collect and side mission fetch quests to do. And when Zach and I are talking about what makes a good open world format, this is more of what I'm thinking of, where it's like it's a more it's non-linear, but it's also not just needlessly open. All of this stuff has a purpose and a point as to, you know, everything is a platforming challenge, everything is explorable, everything just feels handcrafted in a way that, while open worlds are handcrafted, they just feel like a place with a bunch of objects stuck to it instead of a place designed to be a video game level.
Yeah, I would say like something like Spider-Man and Miles Morales. I still need to get to Spider-Man 2, but I would say what Spider-Man and Miles Morales do is pretty cool. With like at least the web swinging is really, really fun. So just traversing the city is fun, even if yeah, it's just New York City. And there's the crimes and stuff to do, of course. You know, there are side objectives, but the world itself is just sort of like, it's full, but it's empty, if that makes any sense. But at least you have the
Yeah.
web swinging. That is really, really fun to just do tricks on. But yeah, most of the time it is just like getting into a car and drive to your objective. And like nothing really happens in between. Go from point A to point B, except we made point A to point B really, really long.
Yeah, I mean, it's reminding me of when I played Dead Rising 3 fully in co-op with Zach's brother. Is that we still had fun as a co-op game of driving around, but ultimately, all that space in Dead Rising 3 never felt purposeful. It just felt like we need to make things bigger than Dead Rising 2. Dead Rising 2 took place in a mall, so let's make Dead Rising 2 take place in like a city block with occasionally some inside buildings. And it felt very kind of arbitrary. We need to make this bigger, and not like it felt like this space was actually a worthwhile thing to bring. To me, like, what makes sense as an expansion to something like Dead Rising is still setting it inside of a mall or big shopping center or something. But with each game, you would have things be way more detailed and interactable, showing off the new technology, instead of it just being a giant open roam city you're walking through.
A lot of sequels do like to be like, hey, we made the previous game, but it's bigger. And I'm like, it doesn't really need to be bigger. You just need to take what the previous one was doing and do it better. I wouldn't even care if they made like a new Dead Rising, and the Dead Rising mall is just as big as it was in 2. As long as, yeah, like you said, I think more interactivity would be the more fun part, instead of we just arbitrarily added more square footage.
Right. And I think drawing from this era might be a nice way to, think about that. Like, take that linear design, but kind of push it outwards a bit without making it feel, just aimless. Now, Moff did mention in their post that the sound design is very much alpha. But I will say that while I think most of these sound effects work totally fine for this little demo, the only sound effect I don't like is that when you pick up these collectibles, when you get a bunch of them at the same time, it can be ear grating. Like that. Like, if you pick up a huge amount of them, the sound effects overlapping each other leads to something that is a little hard on the ears. I think it would just be a matter of, finding maybe a different sound effect, or changing how the sound effects layer, or just something like that. I know the sound effects in general will probably be changed, and that's fine too, but that's the only one to me that really stands out in this demo as, ooh, that's a little grating. How far are we in on time, Zach?
Not even 20 minutes.
Oh, wow. So I guess I'll try to explore the surrounding area a little bit more, because when I was inside that Coliseum with that little cube thing, that's technically the end of the level. You walk into that thing, and then it just gives you you win, and then the demo ends. But yeah, there's plenty more to see here.
You wanna know what this game is missing? The yellow paint. Everybody loves yellow paint.
True. I need it to show me exactly where all the springs are, or else I'll get very confused. But despite how much people bitch about that, like with Resident Evil 4 and like other modern games signposting things like that, I've never really got that. Like, I get that in older games, because of the nature of the simplistic graphics, it was a lot more easier to tell where you were going because everything was more intentioned because it's not as textured. Whereas in modern games, things do look more realistic. So it does become a problem where signposting sometimes is needed to show where you're going. And some techniques are less or more transparent than others. But I don't think having some yellow paint on some barrels to let you know that those barrels are the ones you're supposed to touch is a bad thing. I think it's kind of weird that that's something people fixate on over other actual issues modern games have.
Gamers are just really touchy about the idea of any game holding their hand. Which I think that... I'm not sure if that's more from the NES era, or if, like, Dark Souls brought that back, or, I don't know. I think people just go like, grr, just let me figure it out on my own. And then you watch YouTube Let's Players, and then they never ever know what they're doing.
Yeah, like a lot of video game testing and Q&A is just making games as idiot-proof as possible. And yet, you'll still find somebody that is both complaining about the you know, a game being too easy, but then also, you know, not knowing what they're doing, and then you know, everything ultimately reveals itself. That, nope, they're the one that's making the problem.
At some point, you can't just make something idiot-proof. Like, how do you make a game DSP-proof, Brandon? I don't think you can.
You know, you can't. There's a video of the man failing to make rice noodles in a cup. I mean, you can't... There's not much you can do with DSP.
Yeah, like, I do get annoyed if games get overly hand-holdy, but I think, like, we can agree that were definitely games that don't ever hold your hand and they just push you out into traffic, and then say good luck. There are definitely games that do that, and we should move away from it. But, you know, there is definitely a balance that can be stricken.
And, you know, that's why a lot of people do love From Software, because they make games that, instead of tutorializing you with messages popping on screen, they do just make their games so you're just learning through literally playing and watching things as they pop up, like, you know, where enemies are positioned and, you know, figuring out how to scroll the menus and all that kind of stuff. And it makes a lot of sense. It's just that, you know, for a lot of people, From Software is the ultimate part of the other direction, where it's too obtuse, and I need at least some little direction as to how to do something, and I'm not just going to look at the manual. I need, you know, and then there's the other option, like with some of, for example, the later Sonic the Hedgehog games, especially the ones in the Wii generation, where, because, oh, it's motion controls, we have to over-tutorialize you, so get ready to do an entire world that is nothing but hand-holding missions describing how to do running left and right or jumping, and then you get a clear message for learning how to jump. Like, none of that is necessary. You should just be able to, you know, that's part of just one level, is teaching a person how to do basic movement. You don't need to make it so each individual piece of movement is its own mission. That's so incredibly frustrating.
Oh, fighting games have been doing that a lot recently. They'll just make you do a tutorial where they're like, you can hold forward to move forward. And I'm like, game, that I can do that. And they'll put it into different sections. Walk forward, walk backward, jump forward, jump backwards, duck. And it's like, game, you don't need to make each of these an individual section. Just give me a moment to wiggle the analog stick and figure it out. The card games also do that a lot as well. They'll be like, hover your mouse over the card. That'll zoom in. Now click the card to play it.
Is it just because they expect that, you know, many people expect that this will be someone's first video game, and that's why they designed them that way?
I feel like that's how it is, because isn't there a Miyamoto quote? I think it's Miyamoto, maybe it's someone else, where he says, you should always treat every game like it's someone's first. And I kind of agree to that to some extent, but I think just because someone's never played a video game before doesn't mean they'll look at a controller like it's witchcraft, and they'll be like, I don't know what to do with the stick in my hand. You know, like, if you just give them a safe sandbox where they can't get hurt and just let them hit some buttons for a little bit, I think they could be like, okay, so, like, because, you know, I remember, I have footage of me as a kid when I was, like, 3, playing Aladdin, and I wasn't good at it, but you could tell I understood the basics as a toddler. Like, I was moving, I was jumping on platforms. I don't think I could beat the boss, because I couldn't do pattern recognition, but as a 3-year-old, I understood, hey, D-pad move, button jump. I think tutorials should only really come in when it's things that aren't so obvious, you know, like explaining, like, certain mechanics. Like, I'm trying to think of one for, like, you could probably explain the homing attack, or, like, homing attack chains. Or, trying to think of one that will be relevant to this one. Oh, or the, you know, the air dash, because that's probably, like, you could probably explain the air dash, too. But I think basic moving and jumping, you could probably just let the player figure that one out.
But it also makes sense for Miyamoto to say something. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Oh,
okay, there we go. I just
we got out of it.
I stomped and corrected myself. But it makes sense for Miyamoto to say something like that because he's the face of Nintendo. The game's literally designed for children and pretty much anybody. For many other developers, you know, they all have their own philosophies.
Yeah, you know, like lots of things, I think a middle ground needs to be reached. I don't think fighting games, for example, need to be teaching people, hey, move stick to go forward and backwards and jump and duck. But, like, you might want to teach throwing, throw teching, light, medium, heavy combos, like, things that might actually need explaining. But I guess we could say that varies from game to game.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, you know, it did take me a bit to learn the moveset in this game because there is no tutorializing. You just kind of have to figure out the controls for yourself. And once I got it down, I actually really liked the moveset. It's just, there's a lot of different moves taken from different games. And if there's anything I'd maybe give as a suggestion to Moff, it's that maybe streamline the movement a little bit so that way, you know, either combine some of the moves or there's not as many moves. And I kind of like the option of choice, but I don't know if it necessarily needs every single piece of movement that it has. But I think overall, it has a ton of potential. I love the aesthetics. I love the vibes of it. I'm just curious what this looks like as a full video game. But that was their first submission ever for Sage, and it clearly already shows a lot of promise. So yeah, I figure this will just be a short one. I kind of showed what I needed to of this one just to give people an idea. If you go on the Sage 2025 website or the Sonic Fan Games HQ website, you'll find this as Jinx. It's done by Moff, Moff. And give this demo a shot too if this looks interesting to you. It has a very relaxing vibe, and I think it's worth giving it a chance. So that wraps it up for this edition of Keeping BZ. And I believe next time Zach will be showing off his choosing of a demo from Sage from a new developer. And we'll join you for that then.